Welcome to The Foundry by Forge College. Today, we're drafting the master blueprint for your capstone project. I am incredibly excited to guide you through this explainer because we're going to take all that fascinating history of cryptography and turn it into something tangible and honestly powerfully argued. But first, let me ask you a quick question. Are you currently drowning in a sea of browser tabs? I mean, does your computer sound like it's literally preparing for takeoff right now? Look, if you're staring at an absolute mountain of raw materials, stuff on cryptography, digital cash, timestamping, and you're feeling just a little bit panicked, take a breath. You are in the exactly right place. It is completely normal to feel overwhelmed when you're looking at decades of decentralized innovation.
Here's the really great news, though. You already did the heavy lifting. Think back to our previous lesson, connecting timestamping to blockchain's intellectual lineage. You already extracted the concrete evidence that links early digital timestamping techniques straight to the fundamental ideas behind blockchain. So now it's really just a matter of assembling those analytical parts into a solid, highly defensible structure.
Okay, here's our engineering schematic for today. We've got 5 sections. 1, taming the beast. 2, the map in the tree. 3, source categorization. 4, figuring out timeline versus essay. And finally, 5, the workflow.
All right, let's jump right into section 1, taming the research beast, or synthesis over summarization.
Let's look at the core mechanical function of your capstone, synthesis. Now, summarization is essentially just dumping all your collected parts onto a table, right? It's just a chronological list of facts. But synthesis, which is what we actually need here, is about bolting those pieces of evidence together to form a load-bearing argument. We aren't just reciting history, no. We are making defensible claims about how one innovation physically paved the way for the next one.
Moving right along to section 2, the blueprint tools, specifically the map and the tree.
To build this project without totally losing your mind, we're going to need 2 foundational blueprints. The first one is the research map. This is awesome because it helps you visualize exactly where things live in a spatial format. For example, you can visually map out how a source, say the 1991 Haber and Stornetta paper, directly connects via an intellectual edge right to Ralph Merkel's hash trees. It's basically an annotated graph that shows you the relationships across cryptography, payment systems, and governance. Okay, so once you have your map, you take those core claims and drop them into your argument tree. This acts as the structural support system for your thesis. Think of it as an inverted hierarchy. Your main thesis sits right at the top, like, for example, pre-blockchain timestamping provided the technical primitives for Bitcoin. And then right below that, you build out subclaims that are supported by very specific pieces of evidence. So, to put it simply, the map finds the evidence, but the tree structures the argument.
Section 3, sorting the raw materials into primary, secondary, and tertiary sources.
This is absolutely crucial because if you don't aggressively categorize your materials, you might accidentally build your academic foundation on sand. You definitely don't want that. Notice how we explicitly extract very different data from different kinds of sources. This keeps you out of those irrelevant rabbit holes. So, from a primary technical paper, like Haber and Stornetta, you'd extract the technical construction and their goals. From an implementation spec, like Hashcash, you're grabbing the algorithm details. And from a foundational artifact, like the Bitcoin white paper, that's where you pull the ultimate engineering choices. So here's the big takeaway. For every single piece of evidence you pick up, you must rigorously log 3 specific things before it ever touches your blueprint. Number 1, provenance. Who wrote it, when, and where. Number 2, claim. Basically a 1-sentence summary of what it's asserting. And number 3, reliability. Why is this credible? Or, what are its limitations? Doing this systematically generates the exact raw material you need for your final output.
Which brings us to section 4, final output. Are we building a timeline or an argumentative essay?
Now that your materials are sorted, you have to make a critical engineering decision. What kind of machine are we actually building here? Well, if your materials are super rich in specific dates, milestones, and really direct influence statements, then you should construct the timeline format. It makes those causal relationships beautifully visible. But on the other hand, if you need to deeply explain exactly why specific cryptography mechanisms mattered, then you're definitely going to want to build the argumentative essay. Okay, last but not least, section 5, execution, your step-by-step workflow. So, how do we actually execute all of this without ending up with, 400 open tabs and 0 words written? Well, this is your exact time-boxed manufacturing process. First, define your scope. Second, seed your research map. Third, prioritize your high-value sources. Fourth, do a really deep annotation. Fifth, draft your structure. And finally, revise. You really need to follow this exact order because skipping steps, that just creates wasted effort.
In all of our learning programs here at Forge College, we constantly emphasize this golden rule. It is designed to prevent you from writing essays that are completely devoid of structural evidence. Prioritize, annotate, then write. Let me say that again. Prioritize, annotate, then write. If you start drafting before you prioritize your evidence, you are going to end up with an incredibly weak argument. Remember, evidence first, prose second.
I really want you to keep your quality control standards incredibly high here. Ask yourself this question constantly. Does this source expand my research map, or does it strengthen a branch of my argument tree? If it doesn't do either of those things, drop it. Seriously, toss it out. Don't let a fascinating but ultimately irrelevant tangent distract you from the actual build.
So, here is your mission before our next session. I want you to draft a one-sentence thesis or timeline hypothesis, and then assemble a prioritized list of 8 to 12 candidate sources. Bring this to our next lesson so we can hit the ground running and begin actively mapping these pre-blockchain innovations.
You now have the exact blueprints required to synthesize this incredible history into a really powerful narrative. To explore more about this subject and to discover a bunch of other Web3 topics, make sure you visit forge.college. And as you start sifting through these early cryptography popers, I want to leave you with this to chew on. What completely forgotten piece of digital history holds the exact key to unlocking your Capstone's argument? Have a great time gathering your materials, and I'll see you on the factory floor next time.